I'll never forget the first time I realized my home was about to become a battleground. I had just finished a grueling 12-hour overnight shift at the local hospital, where I work as a floor nurse, and the only thing on my mind was my couch and a few precious hours of sleep. I was mentally drained and physically sore, with a dull ache starting at my lower back and radiating up to my shoulders. But as I turned onto my quiet suburban street that morning, something in my driveway made me slam on the brakes. A strange silver SUV was parked right there, smack in the middle of my driveway. My driveway! At first, I thought maybe it was a medical emergency or someone had car trouble and needed a spot to pull over. But there was no note, no neighbor standing by looking guilty, nothing, just that SUV as if it belonged there. Frustrated, but hoping it was a simple mistake, I found a spot on the street and carefully slid in, already annoyed at how rare street parking was in our neighborhood. I got out, scribbled a quick, polite note. "Hi, this is private property. Please don't park here again. Thanks," and tucked it under the windshield wiper. Then I trudged inside, heart pounding from the unexpected confrontation. My dad, who's in his late 70s and struggles with mobility issues, was staying with me for a few days. He depended on my driveway's easy access to get in and out. The entire point of clearing that space was so I could help him safely. I dropped onto my couch thinking, maybe it's just a fluke. Little did I know that SUV was about to be the start of something far more sinister. Hey, before we jump into this wild story, I have a small favor to ask. If you could take a second to hit that like button and subscribe, it would really help our channel grow and bring you even more crazy stories like this one. Also, we love seeing where our audience is tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let us know which city you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far our community is spreading. I woke up a few hours later, still groggy from my night shift, to find the SUV still in my driveway. My polite note had been crumpled and tossed into the nearby bushes. That's when my blood started to boil. I had to leave soon for an appointment with my dad's doctor, so I needed my driveway clear in case I had to help him walk out with his cane. Irritated, I wrote a second note, this time firmer. "This is private property. Do not park here. Final warning." I placed it on the windshield again, figuring that surely the driver would take the hint. But life never seems to go the way you plan, does it? The next morning, bright and early, I walked outside for a quick grocery run and found that same SUV lurking there as if it had every right to my driveway. My final warning had been shredded into pieces and scattered on the ground. I stood there, adrenaline spiking, thoroughly done playing nice. My elderly dad needed an easy route to the door. Why on earth was some random person ignoring basic courtesy? Was this a neighbor's friend, a stranger who thought my driveway was public domain? That's when I decided enough was enough. A day later, I mustered up the energy to confront whoever owned that SUV directly. My first chance came early in the morning. I was outside, studying the offending vehicle, trying to figure out if I could legally have it towed without confrontation. Just then, I noticed a figure emerging from the house across the street. Karen, the newly elected HOA president. She had that trademark Karen look, angled blonde bob, crisp white blouse, a permanent scowl that seemed etched on her face. I'd heard stories about her from neighbors, rumors of her being overly strict, harassing people about minor yard infractions, sending violation notices for grass that was half an inch too tall. But I'd never had a reason to talk to her until now. Karen marched straight toward me, eyes laser-focused on my face. "What are you doing near my car?" she snapped, voice echoing through the quiet morning air. My eyebrows shot up. Her car? This woman was the driver who'd been hijacking my driveway? I struggled to stay calm. "This is your SUV?" I asked, forcing politeness into my tone. She crossed her arms, a smirk forming. "Yes. The street parking in this neighborhood is ridiculous, and I have important HOA business. So I use your driveway sometimes. It's not like you're using it constantly." My jaw tightened. "But you're parking on my property without permission, and you've ignored my notes. I have an elderly father who needs easy access." She let out a derisive snort. "Look, I'm the HOA president. I know all the rules. You don't own this street." She jabbed a finger at my driveway. "Besides, If you were that concerned, you would have spoken to me sooner. I felt my cheeks get hot. I tried to talk politely through the notes you tossed away. Karen shrugged, stepping into her SUV. If you want me gone, you'll have to do more than scribble on scraps of paper. Then she slammed the door and reversed out with a squeal of tires. So this was the HOA president. My frustration shifted into pure outrage. For the next few days, Karen actually stayed away. I thought maybe she got the message and realized how serious I was. My dad was relieved. No more precarious maneuvering on the street. But sure enough, peace lasted less than a week. One evening, I returned from yet another exhausting hospital shift to find Karen's SUV not only in my driveway, but parked so aggressively that it blocked the ramp I'd installed for my dad's walker. He was inside the house, but if he'd needed to leave for any emergency, we would have been out of luck. Furious, I stomped across the street. My heart pounded against my ribcage as I hammered on Karen's door. Her porch light flicked on, and she opened the door with a face that practically screamed, "You again?" "You blocked my dad's access ramp," I said, trying not to yell. "He can't get out." Karen rolled her eyes as if I were complaining about a trivial matter like a lost pen. "Your father can just walk around it. Let's be honest, you're making a huge deal out of nothing." I clenched my fists, counting to 3 in my head. "He's elderly. He uses a walker. That's not nothing." "Move your car." She gave the biggest, most dramatic sigh I'd ever seen. "Fine. But know this, as HOA president, I can make your life very complicated if you keep harassing me." Then she slammed the door in my face. Minutes later, she moved her SUV. But I stood there in my driveway, staring at the oil stains her car had left behind, stomach churning from her threat. The next morning, Dad's nurse came by for a scheduled home visit. We were in the living room discussing his medications when I heard a loud thud outside. I hurried to the window. Karen had returned and was adjusting something near our mailbox, of all places. I slipped outside, confusion turning to alarm. Karen had posted a bright pink notice on our mailbox labeled HO violation. It accused me of storing hazardous materials in my driveway, apparently referring to the leftover oil droplets from her SUV. "You can't fine me for something you caused," I snapped, grabbing the notice. "This is insane." Karen stared me down. "Watch me. As president, I can issue citations for any violation of neighborhood standards. An oily driveway definitely qualifies." I could hardly believe her nerve. "That's from your car leaking. You're the one who—" She cut me off with a condescending wave. "It's your property. You are responsible for keeping it clean. End of story. Fix it by next week or face a fine." My hands shook. Dad's nurse came out to see what was going on and asked if everything was okay. Karen shot her a glare and pivoted away without a word. It was humiliating. I felt cornered, outraged, and worried about how my father would react to this stress. I decided to do something about it. Enough warnings, enough heated exchanges. Karen was escalating, so I started thinking, what are my legal options? That afternoon, still fuming, I phoned a friend from college, Dan, who now worked at a local law firm. He specialized in property disputes and HOA conflicts. After hearing my story, he practically coughed in disbelief. "This is a direct trespassing issue," Dan said. "She has zero right to park in your driveway without permission, HOA president or not. If it happens again, you can have her towed. It's legally within your rights as the homeowner." "But she's the HOA president," I repeated, my voice low. "She claims she can get me in trouble with fines or something." Dan chuckled. "The HOA can't override private property laws. Also, if she's threatening you, that's harassment. Keep records, photos, notes, time she parks there. If you have proof, calling a tow company is completely valid. Trust me, I've seen this scenario 100 times." That phone call lit a fire under me. I'd tried to be patient. Warning notes, personal confrontations, but Karen had spat on every effort. My father's safety was at stake. Next time her SUV showed up on my driveway, I'd do exactly what Dan suggested. I didn't have to wait long. A few days later, I came home from a short grocery run to find Karen's SUV glinting in the sunshine, occupying my driveway like a piece of property she owned. My father was expecting a home health aide that afternoon, and we needed easy access to the front door. This was it. My phone had the number of a local tow company on speed dial. I snapped a few quick photos of her SUV on my property, clearly blocking the walkway, and dialed. "Yes, I have an unauthorized car on my driveway," I told the dispatcher calmly, giving them my address. They arrived shockingly fast. And let me tell you, watching that tow truck hook up Karen's precious SUV to its rig was oddly therapeutic. My heart pounded with a mixture of nerves and satisfaction. I'm doing the right thing, I told myself. She left me no choice. 20 minutes later, the SUV was gone. I hovered by the window, half expecting Karen to burst out of nowhere, but she never showed. I finally breathed easy, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this public humiliation would end her brazen parking habits. Later that evening, boom, boom, boom. A furious pounding on my front door nearly made me spill my drink. Here we go. I opened the door to find Karen, face beet red, clutching her phone like a weapon. "You towed my car?" she screeched, practically shaking. I leaned against the doorframe, staying calm. "Yep, you parked in my driveway, again." Karen's chest heaved as she pointed a trembling finger at me. "That was illegal. I had important HOA documents in there. You can't just steal my car." I raised an eyebrow. "Illegal? No, you were trespassing. I warned you multiple times." Her nostrils flared. "I am the HOA president. I was on official business. You had no right." I exhaled sharply. "And being HOA president means what? You get VIP parking in my driveway? Newsflash. HOA rules don't override private property laws." Karen's mouth opened and closed, her mind scrambling for a counter. Then, as if she had a brilliant idea, she whipped out her phone. "Fine! I'm calling the police! You're harassing me!" She punched in the number with shaking hands. I shrugged. "Go ahead, I'll wait." A tense 15 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Karen ran toward them like they were her personal backup team. "Officers, thank God you're here. He had my car towed for no reason. This is theft." The taller officer, Reynolds, sighed. "Ma'am, slow down. What exactly happened?" Karen pointed wildly at me. "He took my car. I was parked here because there's never street parking. I have important HOA duties, and he's been harassing me." Reynolds turned to me. "Sir, did you have the car towed?" I nodded, showing my photo evidence of her SUV in my driveway, multiple times. Reynolds barely looked at Karen before saying, "Ma'am, a driveway is private property. He has the legal right to remove unauthorized vehicles." Karen's face went pale, then twisted in rage. "No, that can't be right. I'm the HOA president." The second officer, Martinez, let out a tired sigh. "Ma'am, that doesn't give you the right to park on someone else's property. If you want your car back, you'll need to pay the towing fee." Karen gasped so dramatically I thought she'd pass out. "Pay? You expect me to pay for this?" Reynolds crossed his arms. "That's how towing works." Karen's hands shook with fury. "This is a conspiracy. You're taking his side." Martinez narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am, you called us for illegal towing. If you make another false report, you could be charged." Karen's breath hitched. She realized she had lost. Desperate, she turned back to Reynolds. "So that's it? You're just going to let him get away with this? He should be arrested. What kind of cops are you? Do you even know who I am? I control this entire neighborhood. If I say someone is breaking the rules, you listen." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, the law doesn't care who you are. It's his driveway, his property, and his rights. I suggest you start reading the laws instead of trying to make them up." Karen's face twisted with fury, her fists clenching like she wanted to throw something. She turned, shooting me the nastiest glare I've ever seen. "You'll pay for this. This isn't over," I smirked. "Oh, I'm sure it's not." With that, she stormed off. The officers gave me a knowing nod before leaving. I exhaled, finally enjoying the peace of a Karen-free driveway. For now. For about a week, Karen vanished from my driveway. She avoided me in passing too, casting dirty looks whenever we both ended up outside at the same time. I naively thought that was the end of it. I poured my energy back into caring for my father, who had upcoming surgery. Meanwhile, I tried to keep up with my hospital shifts, which were physically and emotionally draining. The last thing I needed was more drama from Karen. But drama has a way of finding you when the other person craves conflict. One calm Saturday morning, I woke up planning to take Dad to a follow-up appointment. I opened the curtains, and my jaw dropped. Not only was Karen's SUV back in my driveway, she had a second car parked behind it, totally blocking me in. The nerve! I rushed outside, furious but also worried. Dad's appointment was in 2 hours. I didn't have time for Karen's nonsense. The second vehicle was a smaller sedan, presumably belonging to one of Karen's friends or family members. Why on earth did she think my driveway was a communal lot? My father came to the door, leaning on his walker. "Everything okay, son?" I clenched my fists, trying to remain calm. "Karen's at it again, Dad. She parked 2 cars this time." He sighed, shaking his head. "That woman has no respect." I placed a supportive arm around him. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." I tried knocking on Karen's door again. No answer. I called out, even asked a neighbor if Karen was home. Nobody had seen her. She was either ignoring me or genuinely not around. Either way, I had to do something. My father needed an unobstructed path to the car. Dan's advice echoed in my head. You can legally tow any vehicle parked on your property without permission. So that's what I did. I called the tow company again, explained we now had 2 unauthorized cars in my driveway. They chuckled, remembering my last call, and said they'd send 2 trucks right away. Within 30 minutes, both trucks arrived. The drivers shook their heads, amused at how blatantly these vehicles were blocking me. They hooked up Karen's SUV first, then the sedan. I felt a pang of nervousness. Karen was going to explode, but I also felt relief. She had shown zero respect for my property or my dad's condition. Enough was enough. Watching those tow trucks drive off with both cars was almost surreal. The adrenaline rush left me shaky, but inside I felt vindicated. Let Karen try to spin this any way she wanted. The law was on my side. The meltdown came 2 hours later, right on schedule. I was helping Dad finish his physical therapy routine in the living room when we heard a car screech to a halt outside. Through the window, I saw Karen practically sprinting up my driveway, face twisted in rage, phone pressed to her ear. I walked onto the porch, bracing for impact. "Where is my car?" she yelled, voice cracking as she pointed an accusatory finger at me. "Both of your cars were towed," I said matter-of-factly. "Parking in my driveway is trespassing. I'm done playing nice." The look on her face was pure shock and fury. "You? How dare you? I'm the HOA president. This is harassment. I'm calling the cops." She started pacing in circles, babbling into her phone about how she was being targeted. Spit flew from her lips as she demanded an officer come immediately. My dad, peeking through the doorway, shook his head in disbelief. When the police arrived again, it was the same pair as before. Karen ran at them, gesturing wildly toward me. "He's had my cars towed, twice. This has to be illegal. Arrest him." One officer sighed, turning to me. "You have pictures again?" I nodded, holding up my phone. "Cars parked in my private driveway. No permission. Blocking us in." "Just like last time," the officer said. Then he faced Karen. "Ma'am, as we've already explained, he's within his rights to tow unauthorized vehicles on his property." Karen let out a strangled cry. "But I'm the HOA president." "That doesn't give you the right to park wherever you want," the officer replied calmly. She started hyperventilating, shouting that I was ruining her life, that she would destroy me with HOA fines, that I'd regret this forever. Meanwhile, the officers looked like they just wanted to finish the paperwork and get out of there. I stood by, arms folded, letting Karen fling her words like daggers. She was so enraged she could hardly form a coherent sentence. The meltdown peaked when she realized both cars were already at the impound lot. She'd have to pay towing and storage fees for 2 vehicles. I'd never seen anyone so enraged. She practically shook with fury, face bright red, tears threatening to spill as she realized there was no quick fix. The officers just told her in the most professional tone possible that there was no crime committed on my part. Then they left, leaving Karen in full meltdown mode. Karen turned her glare on me, her voice trembling. "I hope you're happy," she spat, stepping closer, ignoring my father who was watching from the doorway. "You've made an enemy you can't handle." I stayed silent, my heart pounding, every muscle tense. Part of me felt sorry for her, imagining the embarrassment she must be feeling, but mostly I felt exhausted. All I'd done was defend my property and my father's well-being. Her phone rang, likely the tow lot calling back about the fees. She glanced at the screen. curses falling from her lips. Our eyes met again. In them, I saw absolute rage, but also the realization that she was powerless to change the situation. She started to say something else, but then bit her tongue, pivoting on her heel. Without another word, she stormed off my property, shoulders shaking with anger. I watched her retreat, face set in a furious scowl, until she disappeared down the sidewalk. I inhaled a shaky breath, stepping back inside. My father placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, his eyes full of concern. But I just shook my head, leaning against the wall as the adrenaline faded. Karen's meltdown was as dramatic as I expected, and though it wasn't the last confrontation we'd ever have, it was definitely the turning point in this HOA war. She'd taken a stand, and so had I, but this time the law was on my side. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my situation? Drop a comment below.